Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And before we begin our meetings, we acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people on this land and show respect to them today. We also acknowledge our neighbors, the Wattamohawks and the First Nations of Moose Deer, Shawniga, Wasauksing, Magnetawan, Henley Inlet, Nipissing, and the Dokis. We have much to learn about the stewardship of our planet to ensure that the decisions we make today will take into consideration the future of our children and that of our children's children. We begin our learning journey today. And as settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask for an approval of the agenda. The only additions are there's some correspondence been received and added in the addendum to item 5B, and item 8C has been removed from the agenda. Could I have approval of the agenda? Thank you. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? I see none, so we move on. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of council held on October 6th, 2024 as circulated. Could I have a motion? Ted and Terry. All in favor? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters. Zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0015-H and consent application numbers 2B 2024-0010-H and B 2024-0011-H for Carpenter, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0016-H for Sullivan, and consent applications number B 2024-0015-C and B 2024-0016-C for Watkinson. Could I have a mover? Ken, Greg, all in favor? Council will now hold public meetings for the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent or passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment and who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide your full name and address to the clerk. No one other than a specified person, public body, or the property owner may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of the Council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. The purpose of consent application numbers B 2024-0010-H and B 2024-0011-H for Carpenter are to create one new rural residential lot and to grant a right-of-way over the easterly lot to the westerly lot. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0015-H for Carpenter is to recognize the lesser split frontage of 77 meters on the retained land and to require a 50-meter setback from any EP zoned lands. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on July 26, 2024. Notice was therefore considered provided in accordance with requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to these applications?
Correspondence has been received from the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario.
And is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these applications? Has anyone registered to speak to these applications via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to these applications by electronic participation.
Does council have any questions? I see none, so we move on to the next one. We will come back to the decisions after this part of the meeting. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0016-H for Sullivan is to rezone a portion of the subject lands from environmental protection, EP zone, to the rural exception 61, RU-61 zone. I now ask the clerk to state the method which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property on July 31st, 2024, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on August 8th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered divided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
Correspondence has been received from Adina and David Picorni.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
The Picornis have registered to speak to this application by electronic participation, but they weren't sure if they'd be here and they're not in the waiting room.
Does council have any questions? Oh, that's Councillor Finson.
If this is passed, will they have to abide by all of the rules in the Riverstone report? I mean, I see there's lots of things that they have to do to conform to the EP lands. So that means that they would do from that?
Brady, can you reply to that? Thank you.
Yes, through you, your worship. So as they are subject to site plan control, they will have a site plan agreement for the property, and all of the recommendations within the environmental impact study from Riverstone will be implemented.
Thank you.
Thanks. We move on to the third one. The purpose of consent application number 2024-0015-C and B 2024-0016-C for Watkinson are to recreate a parcel that has inadvertently merged to grant a 3-meter wide right-of-way over 62 Sunny Shores Estates Road in favor of Lot 19. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on August 29th, 2024. Notice is therefore considered divided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to these applications?
Correspondence has been received from Enbridge Gas and Hydro One.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these applications? I see no one. Has anyone registered to speak to these applications via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to these applications by electronic participation.
Does council have any questions? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern wasn't about the merger of the two properties. That was done through the provincial government many years ago because it's the same owner. But my only concern was it the 300-meter setback from Star Lake. And I can see that has been dealt with, staff dealt with it. So to me, all issues are resolved to move ahead with this approval.
Thank you. Taylor, do you want to speak to that at all?
Through Richard, nothing to add. I would just turn my camera on in case there's any questions for staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor council will now close the public meeting and reconvene the regular meeting. So I have a motion that the public meeting is held for the following matters is hereby closed and the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. Zoning bylaw amendment application R 2024-0015-H and consent application numbers B 2024-0010-H and B 2024-0011-H for Carpenter. And zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0016-H for Sullivan and consent application numbers B 2024-0015-C and B 2024-001C-C for Watkinson. Could I have a motion? All in favor? Thank you. So now we move into the public meeting where we actually pass the steps. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application numbers B 2024-0010-H and B 2024-0011-H for Carpenter, subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. I have a motion. Mary, all in favor? And the second part of this same one is a motion that bylaw number 2024-085, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll numbers 4903, 010, 009, 02800, and 4903, 010, 009, 02900, application number R 2024-0015-H for Carpenter is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a mover? Ted and Gail? All in favor? Thank you. So the Carpenters has been passed. And we have the next one, motion that bylaw number 2024-083, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-010-03200, application number R 2024-0016-H for 479 Highway 141 for Sullivan is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Over. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks very much. You have a lot of zeros in your property roll numbers. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application numbers B 2024-0015-C and B 2024-0016-C for Watkinson, subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. Mover, Mary, Kim. All in favor? Thank you. And that is passed. Thank you very much. Sorry, it's so boring. Not usually. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for the September 3rd, 2024 meeting of council. Could I have a motion? Gail and Ted. All in favor? Staff reports. Great. And here. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the schedule of regular meetings of council for the year 2025 attached hereto as Schedule A. Could I have a motion to put this on the table? Gail and Mario? Is there any discussion? On page 283. No, 283 of your council package in December. It shows the 2 meetings in December as the 2nd and the 16th. Whereas in fact, they should read the 2nd and the 9th of December. And that's that special meeting where we just discussed the budget. So I think you all have it. The special meeting will be on December 9th. Go ahead.
So just as information, once after council, after these are passed, assuming they're passed, staff will send both the revised 2024 and the 2025 schedules to council. Right.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. This is a planning report. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-090, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-006-02100, application number R 2024-0012-H for Luke Hawk at 174 Hamer Bay Road is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. I'd like this on to be motion, Gail. And there, okay. And I'm going to call on Taylor here to briefly summarize the staff report.
Certainly, Your Worship. The recommendation of the report is to defer a decision until the proposal is reduced in scale. It's requesting the absolute maximum lot coverage, a small increase to boat length, a pretty substantial increase to the deck/dock area of a legal non-complying boathouse, as well as maxing out the dwelling's gross floor area. But there aren't many compromises on the application, so therefore there's a recommendation to defer.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions? Councillor Fellner.
Thank you, Mayor. Taylor, so this was at a public meeting. They came in at least, what, once or twice to consult with your staff already, is that correct?
Yes, it's been to a public meeting, and I believe we'd have had 1 or 2 pre-consultations. That sounds about right.
Right, and so far they haven't changed their opinion of what they want to ask for the rezone, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we defer it today, why do you think they might?
Through Your Worship, I think it shows council's decision on it, so it's no longer just dealing with staff suggestions or recommendations, but it puts a council fingerprint and an action on it.
Okay, fair enough. And then have they dealt with the fill that was placed in front of the cottage earlier in the summer?
Through Your Worship, that's still an ongoing enforcement issue. It's a bit of a parallel to the zoning, so I don't want the two kind of separate process to cross paths. The owner feels that they have an exemption to bylaw. It's staff's opinion that they don't have an exemption. So right now we have it out to our prosecutor for an opinion in that regard.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. My opinion is that the applicant's ask is not only over the top, it's unrealistic, Taylor, and would set up a precedence for future development on our big lakes. Staff, I understand where you're coming from, Taylor, who want us to defer and go back to re-engage with the owners. To me, is a waste of staff's precious time. We have an official plan to follow. We have bylaws to enforce. It's time for us to defeat this application and let the owners come back at a later date with a modification of their own following Seguin's official plan layout and guidelines for site development. That's my opinion on this.
Okay.
In other words, not to defeat the application.
Thank you. Any further comments? So we have a motion on the table. We have a staff recommendation to defer, or we could simply defeat the motion as it stands.
Mm.
I do know that there, at the public meeting, we had many public comments, both written and in person, against this proposal. I don't think we had any in favor of it. Okay, do you have a question? Okay, so I call for a vote. All those in favor of passing it? None. All those in favor of defeating the motion as it stands? So that is defeated. Thank you very much, Taylor. You have a message to deliver from council.
Who's that up in the right-hand corner? Who? The woman.
The list in the white is who's watching.
Oh, that's her. See, I have to go back to the eye doctor.
Okay, we move on to our financial update with Michelle.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The financial update's fairly self-explanatory. We are chipping away at the deficit. We're down to a deficit of 223,000, which is approximately a $60,000 improvement since my last financial update. I'd be happy to take any questions if council has them.
Are there any questions for our treasurer? Councillor Bazinski.
Michelle, do you have any plans to continue to chip away at it? Are there things we could defer or whatever to reduce the deficit?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Bazinski, everybody is doing their best to chip away at that so that we won't have to dig into reserves at the end of the year. So I am very hopeful that we won't have to do that.
Yep, that's.
Councillor Collins.
Yes, Michelle, that's what I've heard, that the directors have been asked for to look at their budget and find out efficiencies throughout the latter part of the year.
Thank you. I believe it's a team effort. Every corner is being watched. So thank you very much, Michelle. Sir, could I ask you okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't one of the items we might have already covered, but you're more than welcome to watch. So welcome. Okay, we move on to item 7. And this is phonom request. It's a little bit of reading, so bear with me. I have a motion, whereas employers across Northern Ontario are experiencing a critical shortage of skilled workers, contributing to shrinking labor market with an estimated 50,000 newcomers needed by 2041 to sustain current Northern Ontario population levels. And whereas the labor shortage is causing significant economic hardship for Northern Ontario communities, including reduced productivity and business closures. And whereas population and migration trends to 2021 suggest the Northern Ontario needs 100,000 newcomers by 2041 to sustain our current population. And whereas the success of the federal, rural, and northern immigration pilot demonstrates the effectiveness of allocating nomination spots to address regional labor shortages in attracting newcomers to Northern Ontario. And whereas the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program has been expanded from 9,750 nominees in 2022 to a goal of 21,500 nominees in 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin urges the Government of Ontario to address the critical market shortage of skilled labor in Northern Ontario by allocating 3,000 Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program spots to support the region's economic growth and development. Be it further resolved that the copies of this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable David Picchini, Minister of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, the Honorable Graydon Smith, MPP for Parry Sound, Muskoka, and the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities and the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. Could I have a mover? Ted and Gail. All in favor? Thank you. You'll note that in the accompanying document, none of these spots are actually allocated to our district. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby accept the resignation of Dale Enerson from the Township of Seguin Business Association and thank Mr. Enerson for his service on the association. Could I have a mover for this? All in favor? Thank you. Oh. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby authorize the following members of council to attend the District of Parry Sound Municipal Association Fall Meeting being hosted by the Township of the Archipelago on Friday, September 27th, 2024 at the Point of Barrel Community Center, which is at 70 South Shore Road in Point of Barrel. Reimbursement of expenses will be as per township policy. Do I have volunteers to attend this meeting? You will be here on the board. Okay, hang on. Collins. It's a Friday. Elner. Mary Bazinski. Turkey lunch. Ken. Are you a no? So we have Councillors Collins, Fellner, Bazinski, Adams, and myself. I need a mover. All in favor? And just to clarify, Ted, I know you sit on the board. We're going to volunteer to do next September, a whole year, like.
That's been slated for, I think, next fall.
Okay, so a year this September.
Yes, that's correct.
So put that on your radar.
It's already allocated, so. Yep.
So we'll maybe need a little staff time allocated to helping us organize that. Is that where it's going to be?
It's easy for them on Highway 11, just come down to 518.
No. Okay. So you're catering, right?
It'd be over budget if I was catering, I can tell you that.
Um. Oh, 7D. Do I have a motion or not? Okay, so this came from the Finance Committee. You can see these resolutions. They're in your council package. And I guess I should read it. This was passed at the Budget Committee, and they are making a recommendation. This is the Township of Seguin Finance Committee does hereby recommend that council direct staff to take into consideration the following recommendations in preparation of the annual user fees. So the user fees are what we charge for facility rentals, what else? Skating, planning fees, building permits, all those things. So their recommendations are that we increase the fees comparable to the tax rate increase and or that of inflation, that we target full cost recovery in individual benefit services, i.e. building, planning, and cemetery. And we smooth the increases over a period of time rather than large increases every 4 or 5 years. So keep a little level, increase level. And discretionary fees should be evaluated yearly against comparators, meaning I think our neighbors, and considering of cost to service level. So it's a recommendation, and I think we should simply consider it as we work through our budget. The next one also comes from, oh, so I'm sorry, Mario, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to give my tirade again about costs, and all I'd suggest is that I agree that the user fees should go up slightly. We're looking at development charges coming in, and I think we have to look at the user fees in combination with all of the other fees that the township has, because we don't want to make it not affordable for people to put up a new building. And I know planning fees are high already, which is required because of the costs and so on. But it's just a cautionary thing that consider the user fees going up in combination with all of the other charges that are going up and the introduction of new development charges. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
The full cost recovery to the building, planning and cemetery, that's the way it's set up now, is it not?
Through your worship, planning is not at full cost recovery. They have been, a couple of years ago, KPMG did a service delivery review report, and it made a series of recommendations around increasing those fees to start going from a fairly low recovery rate to a moderate and work our way towards. So that, if you'll recall, last year's budget planning made a fairly sizable adjustment to start that process. The building department is cost recovery and has specific reserves to ensure that they are stabilized over a period of time. Building comes under a different bylaw when it comes to their user fees because of the legislation around it. Cemetery is similar. I think it's about cost recovery right now, and that those analysis are being completed by staff right now as we prepare the 2025 operating budget for council consideration. But certainly planning is not 100% cost recovery, and there's quite a ways to go.
Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
I guess this is for our CAO. Have we increased the costs for our show road allowance? Because I think that's where there should be a very large increase, especially if somebody wants to buy the shoreline. And I know it's peanuts.
I see Taylor was quick to turn on his camera and I appreciate that because he'll have the answer to that, not I.
Taylor, can you talk about how much we charge for shore road allowances?
Through your worship, we have not updated the price. I don't have the bylaws right in front of me, but it's the same date the bylaws were passed. So that is something that we could look into. We could easily reach out to an appraiser, and because we charge by foot, update the number with either do it through CPI or with an appraised number and bring a recommendation to council in that regard.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I agree with that because it's across the board, whatever the price is per foot. If it's $50 a foot, doesn't matter if you're on a small lake, a mid-sized lake or a large lake. So yeah, that's a good idea, Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just, I get the luxury of spending some quality time with the Finance Committee, and I'm always really impressed with their forward thinking and willingness to dive into the areas that are not always the easiest ones to dive into. This resolution is passed by the Finance Committee, came with quite a bit of discussion and quite a bit of research. And what they're asking for is the council sort of supports this direction and instructs staff, which I think I'm hearing, take these into consideration as we prepare the user fee summaries, which will be coming later this month for council consideration. So I just wanted to make sure that council understood that we're taking this with your instructions to apply to our methodology as we build the user fee model for 2025 and beyond.
Okay, thank you. And I'm all for looking at all of the user fees. I do want to remind people that the reason we have community centers is to have them used and full whenever we can. So I never want to price a community center out of accessibility for our residents or line dancing or whatever the activity is. We want those halls in use. So, but shore road allowances might be an interesting opportunity to take a look at. So staff, we endorse the request from the Finance Department or Finance Committee. The next one comes from them as well. And I don't think I need to read the whole thing, but what it's asking council to consider is that we look at doing budgets on a 4-year cycle instead of year by year. And I think, having spent a lot of time with the Northern Ontario Women's Caucus, most of them are on at least 2 or 3 year budgets. Some go out as far as 10 years because it allows for planning. So I think it's something that we should legitimately look at. And again, do you want to weigh in on what the Finance Committee has talked about?
Happy to, Your Worship. The Finance Committee's looked at a variety of different samples of multi-year budget policies and done some evaluation on the pros and cons of looking beyond just a single year approval. I advise them that before we go any further and before we start to allocate any staff resources, this is really a decision that council needs to make and direct staff on how they would like to proceed. I'll suggest to council that there's quite a bit of work here if we're going to look at this. And in fairness, this isn't something that gets adopted in 2025 because of the term of the cycle of council. It simply can't. It doesn't mean though that we can't do the work now and have the policies before council vetted out and made sure that if this is something that there's an interest for staff to do, that we couldn't start that work in the next 12 months. So again, the Finance Committee is rather excited by the concept of longer term planning, longer term financial strategies, and have suggested that this would be an appropriate next step in how we prepare our budgets to take a look at a longer horizon.
Councillor Finson.
Having said that, I mean, obviously it's working other places. I just wonder how much room you have, because our community, as you know, changes by the day, never mind by the year. So if you budget out for 4 years, how do you manage the huge changes that will be happening in our community in the next 4 years?
Yeah, again, I don't have the answers to this because we haven't done the research. We haven't developed the policies. What the finance committee has done is done some investigation and are suggesting that this ought to be reviewed by staff. And any policy discussions come back to council, and decisions on how to manage the unknowns and fluctuations in a variety of different tasks and services may be affected. So until we do the homework, I don't know that I can answer that question right now, but I think it would be.
Go ahead.
I didn't really want an answer. I guess I worded it wrong. What I wanted to know is if have other people been successful in adding and subtracting things in a budget that's projected for 4 years?
Yeah, and the one thing I will add in is that in my review of some of this, some of the work that the finance committee's done and my own experiences in multi-year budgeting is there's still an annual review process the council goes through to be able to say yay or nay to the annual allocation. It's just a bit more effort in a longer term plan rather than just 1 year at a time.
Counselor Getty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jason, you mentioned that the Finance Committee looked at the pros and cons of different models that have taken place, but unfortunately, the recommendation is coming here without the pros and cons. And I think in fairness, I think something from the Finance Committee, either a review of what they have looked at for some of those pros and cons would assist in moving forward potentially with this recommendation.
I think, I mean, I think if in very brief form, they could point us to some of the research they've done. Counselor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. What throws things off like Councilor Getty was saying, was our March Thaw event, $380,000. Like that put a dent and put us into an operational deficit this year. And that's, you know, that's not a lot of money when you think of it, right? When you compare our township to urban township, that's a drop in the bucket. But to us, it's a lot of money. So to me, I would like to see what their pros and cons are before moving this forward for sure.
Okay.
Not that I'm against it, but maybe for four
Need to learn.
years, you know, 4 years is a long time. And if 380 grand, you know, throws us into a deficit, it should be really looked at. That's my opinion.
Counselor Bazinski.
Well, I think it's a good idea to look at. I think if you look at, say, the roads needs study, it's already pointed out that there are roads that are in urgent need of repair and directs, you know, some level of funding to go to that. Waste management, again, you know, we should be actually getting recommendations from staff in terms of, are there transfers that need to be replaced? Do we need to do any environmental studies to extend the life of the landfill site? All of those types of things could be done in the context of multi-year budgeting. But again, I think it would be more as a guideline than an absolute, because you're quite right. There are unforeseen things that happen, and not just, you know, the freeze thaw event that we had this year, but there could be, you know, breakdowns of equipment. There could be a whole variety of things. So I think it's a good idea to look at what we're doing in terms of overall costs, but I wouldn't want to set a finite budget for years 2, 3, and 4, because then you're setting a finite tax increase as well, which I don't know that we want to do at this point in time. But I think it's a good idea for planning that we should be looking at some of the major expenses in the future past 1 year.
You, Counselor Adams.
I know every year we have challenges and stuff like that with the budget. Myself, I think I'd like to see the format before I really actually form an opinion on a 4-year, whether a 4 year is too long, whether it should be a 2-year. So I think I'd like to see the format before I, you know,
Thank you. And Councillor Getty.
Sorry, and I think it's a good idea to integrate our budget process, long-term and short-term, but I think, you know, my question was if the finance committee has already looked at some of the pros and cons, if they could forward them to us so that, you know, to Councillor Collins and Councillor Finson's concerns, that we can then best tailor it, or staff can best tailor it to fit the needs. That was the reason for asking that question in regards to the pros and cons. Thank you.
Okay, so, Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, I as well think it's well worth looking at. We have a pretty knowledgeable finance committee, and if they think it's worth looking at, well, it's worth looking at.
Thank you. I think you're hearing that, yes, we'd like to look at it. I do point out that for the first time, our strategic plan looks at 30 years and our asset management plan needs to look at 25 or 30 years at least. So we're starting to look at this community for the next generation. So I think it's worth looking at the pros and cons and how would it work. The people I've talked to that use this, years 2, 3, 4, and 5 are not set in stone. They're guidelines, and it's mostly the stuff that Councillor Bazinski referred to that are the big capital chunks that don't happen overnight anyways. You've got to plan for them. And to a certain extent, we already are on roads and heavy equipment. So staff, start looking at it. But the practicality of it is it likely wouldn't come into play until the term of the next council, just because of where we are. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I think what I'm hearing is there's an interest in us exploring. Would like a bit further feedback from the Finance Committee, which I'm confident we can get back to you before year end. They've got a pretty full schedule happening as it speaks, but we frankly, we don't have the resources on hand today to start this work. This would be something we would start in the new year with a new work plan for 2025. So we have a bit of time on our hands. We'll get some feedback from the Finance Committee around the pros and cons and some of their insights a little more detailed for council to consider. But at the same time, we'll start preparing to investigate this in a little more detail in 2025.
Thank you. Do I need to read this whole thing? Okay. So we move on to bylaws, 8A. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-088, being a bylaw to designate a property to be of cultural heritage value or interest to Victoria Street West, which is the Rosso Memorial Hall, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion to this effect? I need to get it on the table before we discuss it. Okay. Okay, Councillor Collins.
I think the only negative of this is the Ontario Heritage Act, because that's governed by the province of Ontario. And what I know is that if it's going to be designated a heritage building, doesn't the taxes increase multitudely, like double, triple? I think that's, I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a restaurant in the Aurelia area in Muskoka Lakes area that their restaurant was in a heritage building, right? And their taxes were so much, they asked the council to take off the heritage designation because they weren't making any money because of their taxes. So I'm wondering how much our taxes in this building are going to go up. And that's the only negative thing that I could think of, because it could be double, triple, quadruple.
I'll ask the CAO to point out, this may not apply here.
Yeah, I'll let the treasurer weigh in if I'm wrong here, but we own the building, so we don't collect taxes on property that we own. So there is no taxes on that property. Michelle, maybe you can just confirm that.
Absolutely. It's exempt from taxes because it's a municipal building.
Even if it's designated a heritage
Yes.
building?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Counselor Bazinski.
Has anyone looked into whether or not the consultant's report for the future improvements of the Rossum Memorial Hall would be acceptable if it was designated under the Heritage Act?
Dominique, are you there? I think you could answer that one.
Through your worship, council. Yes, ERA Architects were actually the same firm we used for our designation statement that was used for the Ontario Heritage Trust. So yes, they have no concerns with their their plan for the hall, whether we go that route or not. What they did suggest is that that would be acceptable under this designation.
And what are the benefits, Dominique, of being designated? Do we get provincial monies, grants or so on?
It does open the door to other funding opportunities. So yes, it also does protect the hall from, anything to do with the stonework on the outside, that is protected. So it means, we won't see that being torn down and, changed to something that's not of heritage value. So it doesn't change the fact that we can put additions on, do renovations, but we do have to sort of look at the heritage value and what components we can use to make sure that stays the way it is now. But there are lots of funding opportunities out there once it's designated, so that is an opportunity for us.
Counselor Collins.
Dominique, has anyone in your department read the Ontario Heritage Act? Because you're making a lot of comments here that we don't have the act in front of us. And I was wondering, did anybody go through the Ontario Heritage Act and making sure that we're heading in the right direction and it's not going to be cost absorbent?
We've gone through it. I can't say I've gone through the entire thing, but I've had meetings with ERA Architects on this. They've done this many times. I've taken their, direction, not lightly, because they are historical architects. They have done this many times before. So I don't see any barriers by getting this designation. I see it as only a good thing. Yes, we have to do some work on finding, if we were to replace some stone on the outside of the building, we want to replace it with similar stone. So there may be cost implications there, but I think, that's what we would want to do with this building. This is a historic building.
Thank you. Counselor Finson.
My thought on it is if it is deemed a historical building, then there will be funding that would attach to that we can do those things with the building that require a little more money and a little more time to do it properly. So I think it's a good thing to have it deemed a heritage building. Thank you.
Thank you. I would agree. I've been involved a couple times in Toronto on heritage designations, and my experience is it opens up a whole lot of windows architecturally, artistically, historically. There are all kinds of little things that we are not eligible for unless you're designated. So the fact that we own the building too, I think is important. So we have a motion on the table. All in favor? And that's carried. And I have motion that bylaw number 2024-084, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2023-093 to revoke the appointment of Max Jasinski as municipal law enforcement officer, bylaw enforcement officer, and animal control officer for the corporation of the Township of Seguin is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover for this? Terry and all in favor? Thank you. We are down to one bylaw officer now. And we skip now to 8D. 8C, the candidate there did not accept the job. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-082, being a bylaw to write off taxes on properties in the Township of Seguin, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Mover. Oops. All in favor? Any discussion? No. Thank you. Council reports. Let's start with Ward 6. Gail.
It's been a busy month. I had a meeting on August the 7th with Rosso Events and the mayor and Cheryl, and it went really well. August the 10th, I attended the AGM for the Lake Rosso North Association. Also attended the 150th anniversary of the store. August the 16th was the Rosso Community Hall party with the anniversary, the 100th birthday party. And I attended the music evening night as well. And it went really well. People enjoyed themselves. August the 15th with the Belvedere Heights meeting. August the 9th to the 21st, I was at AMO. A report will follow next week. It was really good. There was a couple of amazing panel discussions that I watched with they had chamber, police, and medical people there, and they spoke about resolving their issues in their communities together. And it was really interesting, really smart people, chief of police, the president of Chamber of Commerce. It was really well done. I really enjoyed it. And August 24th, I had a Belvedere Heights Finance meeting. The 24th, I also had a Rosso Community Caring Committee meeting. And I also attended the Fall Fair on the 24th. On the 26th, there was a Rosso Community Caring Community meeting. We're discussing the new lunch and learns that will be held in Rosso, and possibly including the nurses station and something there through Mr. Getty. So that was really good. And I also attended another Belvedere Heights meeting on the 26th. On the 23rd, we met about the Lake Rosso North Association with Anne. And on the 27th, there was a special meeting that we all went to. On the August 31st, I went to the Foley Fall Fair, and yesterday I had a meeting for the Pumpkin Festival, and it's well on the way and everything is going well. We did not get funding from the province. Something happened and the application didn't get through, so that's not their fault. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the Labor Day long weekend started off very nicely for me. I was with the Georgian Bay Biosphere Group, and we were sending baby turtles back into the environment. And it happened to be on Blackwater Road, because that's where I guess their mother is, where they came out and they hatched. And but these are only, it was unbelievable because they were only 5 days old and they were going back into the wetland. It was, and immediately they all started to bury themselves, right? As soon as you let them go, they started burying themselves under the, the leaves, the dead leaves and everything. It was just, it was a great day for me. it's an unforgettable day for me. I had a good time with those people. And then, of course, I brought back the director of roads back to my place. And then we had further discussions on the roads in Ward 5. Now, moving on. The rest of the weekend didn't turn out all that well because of, I was up and, running around with with this one particular property out on 65 Loon Drive, an Airbnb. And I had to go out there finally and give them the riot act and say that if they didn't quiet down and act like normal human beings, the next trip out there will be with me and the OPP. So other than that, I had, that's about it. But I think I have a DSAB board meeting. I don't know, I haven't got the agenda yet, so I'm thinking it's probably either going to be this Thursday or the following Thursday. That's it for me.
Thank you. Counselor Fellner.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this month, I had a meeting of the pool wellness center. The early works package is basically completed, and I think the general contractor is slated to establish himself on the site in the next couple of weeks, and foundation work and that type of thing is going to commence. So it's moving right along. The hope is to get most of the concrete work done before the cold weather. So we don't have to hoard it in to add some costs. Of course, I attended this special meeting council last week along with everyone else, and we had a meeting of the Seguin Recreation Committee last week, and I was in attendance. The murder mystery dinner in Norville is on its way in September. I think the posters are up, and it looks like it'll be quite a good event. It's the first time it's been tried, so I encourage everybody that can to buy a ticket and go out and see if they can figure out who done it. And as well, we started working again on the second annual turkey dinner, so we're starting to put things in place to bring that one into reality as well. That's horrible. Yeah, horrible.
Do you have a date for the turkey dinner yet?
We do. I think it's, Ken, you remember, I'm terrible with dates. I think it's the first Saturday in December. Is it not? It's not in conflict
With Santa's breakfast?
Santa's breakfast anymore like it was last year, so. It's sort of off. Huh?
No.
December.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, December the 9th, and I think I think it's anticipated to move the first seating ahead a half an hour or so to give people a little longer to sit and socialize, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Getty.
Sorry, did you say that the dinner was going to be in Humphrey?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Earlier this month at a nursing station meeting, as well as a committee of adjustment meeting, I also attended the 150th anniversary of the general store. I think Dominique, they did a great job with the signs. I think they look fantastic down there. You see a lot of people through the village stopping and learning about the history. Was able to go to the Ross Memorial Hall anniversary, and I'd like to thank Councillor Finson for babysitting my grandchildren for me for a half an hour, gave me a bit of a break. Also attended the special meeting of council for the development fees and just fielding and dealing with a number of calls from residents. So thank you.
Counselor Brzezinski.
Thank you. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Tom McLeod for his prompt response to property owner concerns about certain roads in Ward 2. He was very quick and did a great job. So thank you, Tom. As well, I had a number of other calls from property owners about various things. Hopefully I was able to resolve most of them. I'd like to point out that the submarine cable for Bell is being installed on Little Otter Lake and Otter Lake right now as we speak. They're using the public landing at Little Otter Lake on Sandust Lane. And they have a big barge in there with the cable on it. So that's moving along right now. And I also was at the special meeting for development charges, and I think it was a very good meeting. Council provided a number of comments and questions about their work, which was pretty good in overall, but I believe that the consultants are taking those comments and questions back. I had one further one that I was thinking of because we were dealing with just a township-wide development charges bylaw, and it's difficult to have a township-wide one when you have a certain area that's going to be quite a bit different. And I was thinking, you know, the population projections that were used for the township-wide one, a significant portion of that was for that specific area. So, you know, there were those things. And also, you know, there are other things like the park dedication fee, which, you know, should you be counting in the amount of infrastructure for parks when you have that already off the new development. But anyway, those were overall, it was a good meeting, and I'm sure we'll hear back from the consultants. And that was about it for me.
Councillor Adams.
August the 27th, I attended the special meeting of council. August the 28th, I attended the meeting that Terry talked about, the RC meeting. On August the 31st, I was a gatekeeper at the Foley Fall Fair for a few hours. One thing I have been getting is a lot of complaints about Horseshoe Lake Road. People are concerned when it's going to be done. I'm getting a lot of complaints about Black Road. When they're going to be done, I think there's a petition coming from Black Road. I'm not. Anyway, and I want to thank Tom and Shiloh for helping me out with a couple issues I had this month there. I really appreciate their help a lot.
Thank you very much. August is busy, summer's busy. So I will just run through the places I've been. August 8th was a business committee meeting here. We're planning for the mayor's lunch and optional golf tournament October 1st. So I hope that's on everybody's calendar. Lunch is free for all the business community, and the 9-hole golf tournament is optional and has a $75 per person fee. August 10th was really busy. It started with the Lake Rosso North Association AGM that Gail mentioned, then the library sale at Humphrey, then the dedication of the general store later that morning, and then a dinner for the general store. The 11th was the celebration of life for Dennis G. Murray, who many of you know had a road and neighborhood named after him. He truly was somebody that helped build our community, and this man had 9 lives. He had bionic parts and several heart attacks and all kinds of things, but he has left us. The 13th was an airport commission. The 14th was the Northern Ontario Women's Caucus meeting. And the 15th, fundraising committee meeting for the recreation center. The 16th, as many of you have mentioned, was the celebration for the Rosso Hall and the concert. I'm very glad the floor held up as people started to pound their feet to the rock and roll music. I thought, oh, here we go. But it was a rocking night in the Rosso Community Hall. The 17th was the Clear Lake Association AGM their meetings are incredibly well attended. Greg was there. That was also the CNIB evening cookout with Cuddy, which was a great event, but it poured rain the whole time. So it was very soggy. Then on the 18th was the Little Lake Joe AGM, and Jason and I and Gail headed off to Ottawa that day. The 19th to the 21st, we were at the AMO meeting, and we had some very successful delegations with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who we met for the first time, Paul Calandra, and the Minister of Infrastructure. 23rd, Gail mentioned that we met with Lake Rosso North Association, and it was primarily about the issues on Cameron Bay. And I have to take my hat off to Taylor, who did an outstanding job of explaining to some very upset citizens what a township can and can't do within its rules based. And I think the people who attended that meeting came away going, oh my goodness, the township has done an outstanding job of trying their best to juggle. And it'll be interesting to see. We can't comment much because we really don't have an application from these people. So we're a little bit stuck at how much we can give them. We don't have an application. Then the 24th, Scott Aitchison and I opened the Rosso Fall Fair to great fanfare. Just to point out, it was the 149th Rosso Fall Fair. So next year they're planning on a biggie for the 150th. The 25th was Kim's Swim for the Recreation Center. It was held at 9 Mile Beach in McDougall. It was a very successful event. I think we're going to be a little bit over $8,000, and that'll be doubled by our anonymous donor. And I feel a little guilty. I'd never been to 9 Mile Beach in McDougall before. And as we drove around, it was 6:30 in the morning when we were there to put up the signs. It's a magnificent location. It really is. Miguel and I drove into that corridor and said, wow, we didn't know that next door was this kind of a facility. And McDougall was outstanding. They had staff there all day, including their fire department and Carling Fire boat. They brought barbecues, Johnny on the spots, garbage pails, and stayed all day and said, there's no cleanup for anybody. We're doing it all. So that was a nice way for McDougall to welcome us. And Kim says she's going to swim every year she's alive and wants to do it in a different township each year. So if you've got an idea of a place, a lake that would be 6 kilometers plus. She wants to swim the bay, but we've been discouraging her because it's so hard to control waves. And she's not a strong swimmer. 27th, we had the special council meeting with the DC charges. The 28th was the official opening of the Sargent plant on Osler Park. It's pretty impressive to go through a tour and understand how they run it. There's no pollution coming out of there. They fill a concrete truck every 6 minutes. So a lot of concrete can come out of there in a day. We also, at that opening, received a $50,000 check from Scott Elliott, the owner of Sargent Cement, for the recreation center. So that was a nice way for them to say we are part of the community. Then on the 29th, I attended the reconciliation ceremony at the Friendship Center in Parry Sound, which was very well attended. People from all over, and it was quite a moving ceremony. And the 31st, I was there to open the fall fair, and I have to take my hat off to Steve, because if you remember the night before the Foley Fall Fair, there was a lightning and thunderstorm. So everybody got to Foley and there was no running water. And Ken was on vacation. Steve somehow materialized out of nowhere, and by about 9 there was running water, but it was pretty tense as we arrived. They said, Ann, can you turn on the water? And I couldn't. And just a brief thing, some of you may have gotten calls. I got a lot of calls this weekend about some stop signs that were missing. They seemed to, first of all, I thought it was one, and Debbie responded right away. Then it was another one, Debbie said she'd take care of it. We've now traced that there were 11 stop signs removed, all headed on to Lake Joe Road. So I've handed it over to the OPP. This is not some kid doing this for fun. This is somebody on the weekend taking dangerous stop signs away. So if you get any calls, just let me know where they are. But they were all the ones that we found that people found that were missing led on to Lake Joe Road. So that's my comment, and over to our CAO, you were missed on your vacation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Glad to be back. Just a couple quick reminders. The township is encouraging residents to share their thoughts and feedback on township engagement and communications through a short survey. The survey is available at letsconnectseguin.ca, and it's also available in paper form at the township office here in Humphrey and at all Seguin Public Library branches. For the parents of Seguin, no need to be reminded that today was back to school. We all are excited about that. And as such, we should all be reminded of some quick safety tips, including being aware of the school buses, staying alert, following speed limits, and being aware of the school zones, and watch for pedestrians, children, and cyclists. And as usual, check in on our website and social media channels to keep up to date on all the ongoing activities through the township. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and the correspondence as presented on the agenda for the September 3rd, 2024 meeting of council. You need a mover. Oops. All in favor? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 3:48 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to personnel matters about an identifiable individual, a proposed land acquisition, and a position plan procedure, criteria, and instruction, again, related to a proposed land acquisition. Could I have a mover to move into closed? All in favor? Thank you. Okay. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby rise from the closed session and declare the regular meeting reconvened at 4:28 p.m. Could I have a motion? Gail and Terry. All in favor? And I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-087, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Mario and Ken. All in favor? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting of council at 4:29 p.m. to meet again Monday, September 16th at the call of the mayor. And and all in favor, thank you. I just want to correct something that I think we need a redo of the date